The two championship contenders giving it everything.
No biking. No biking.
It's lights out.
No biking.
And away we go.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Pitstop Pals. Dusty and Gage are back with you once again, the F1 podcast by fans, for fans, and no race this past weekend, so we have not yet to recap the Australian Grand Prix. We'll get into that, Gager, and then obviously we'll set up Japan this weekend, but man, there was a lot to talk about coming out of that Grand Prix down under, wasn't there? Holy smokes, what a race.
Yeah, no, that was, I mean, the amount of people that filmed themselves after Max went out and just that, everyone wanted that race, to eliminate Max Verstappen and see what happened. And I just can't believe what Carlos was able to accomplish. They showed him even getting up on the podium, like he was sore from having the appendicitis. And he did his best Max Verstappen imitation. Like he took over and really there was he started putting distance between everyone and just a phenomenal race for him. I think that's why Japan looks so exciting to see what he can do if he can kind of have some sort of repeat performance, because really he's the hottest commodity in F1 right now.
Yeah, I know. And he's a free agent. Like it's the Warren Fogle contract year. It's pretty impressive for Carlos Sainz. And you're right. Like, so Max goes out. We'll get to that going out in a second. And I think when that happened, I thought, okay, well, like this is kind of anybody's race, and it was good. You saw, McLaren and Ferrari, and we'll get up to Checo settling in behind those four cars in a second. But I didn't expect Carlos Sainz to sort of just driver of the day, smooth, not really tested. Maybe I don't give him the respect he deserves, but I was very impressed with what he did.
I really think you gotta look to Freddie Vasseur, Dusty, what he's been able to accomplish at Ferrari as team principal. It's kind of funny watching the Drive to Survive because it is the previous year, but seeing him kind of implement his rules and kind of jovial, but all the local, Italians going, why don't we have an Italian guy here? But he seems to have won over the Scuderia so far. And look, they've run good plans. The car seems to be getting better and better. They're competitive. They're getting into a Q3 all the time here. I wonder, like we'll talk about Checo, but I wonder if Ferrari can kind of pull off that, maybe they can split the Red Bulls and maybe one of them can actually go after Max. That'll be very difficult, but we'll see.
Did you dive into the post-mortem on Max Verstappen and what ended up happening to that car?
Just what I read was there was just overlooking the car. They didn't do a full kind of diagnostic, and somehow when right off the start the brake engaged, and you could see it Max said it at the first corner. You could kind of see he went wide, and obviously it did affect him a little bit. But what was even more impressive was Carlos just jumping on the first mistake he saw too, right? It wasn't like, oh, what's going on with Max? He was ready to do something there. But Max in the pit, like coming back into the pit, was obviously a little bit upset and pointing to his head saying, it's like stupid. We can't make these types of mistakes because now, which is great because, it without Max kind of winning again, it really shrunk up the pack for the driver's standings right now. And it's really, really quite tight.
It's funny because we were talking about it last week when you were around the EST offices, I guess on Thursday. And I was like, have you seen the theories that Red Bull did it on purpose because they're not happy with Max and his dad right now? And it sounds insane, but it also sounds very F1-ish, doesn't it?
It does, only because they're so confident in Max that he can, rebound. If there's one driver and one car that can rebound after a DNF, it's Max. But there was another thing I kind of like. This silly season of driver seats is very interesting, Dusty, because Ollie Behrman, there's a lot of talk about him, and there was I was wondering why they were talking about him so much and how he deserves a seat, and one of the aside from Carlos being one of the most sought after young talents. Okay, so I guess what he was learning on in the simulator was he was learning on Leclerc's steering wheel.
Okay.
All right. And everyone has their steering wheel customized to them, where the clutch pedals, where everything is. When he went in, it was Carlos's wheel. So he'd never used it before. And I mean, there are subtle differences, but to go in and have a performance that like he did using something like a completely foreign steering wheel that he wasn't used to, it's even more impressive when you actually look at everything that they do on every corner, adjusting the brake differential, different settings throughout the race. He was able to learn it on the fly and still perform. So, man, after reading a lot and diving into what he was able to accomplish and what people are talking about, I wouldn't be surprised to see him possibly pushing for a seat next year because of the way Toto talked about how he missed out on Max Verstappen. So, he remained with two veteran guys when he possibly could have had Max as a young kid at Mercedes. And I think.
So you think that Mercedes seat they could look at because I saw Liam Lawson's been like people have been talking about him and wanting a seat somewhere as well, but you're linking Mercedes to the Bearman right now.
I think Toto's going to look. There's another young guy in F2 to see how he in the Mercedes camp that they're really high on. But I think you'll see a young guy and George Russell being the veteran of the team next year.
Well, that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Let's continue with I want to come back around to Checo and the conversation around that right now. The fact that Max is out of a race. You still have to settle in behind the other two teams there. That can't go over very well at Red Bull. But Mercedes, I mean, if we're talking about disasters down under, this one takes the cake. I mean, Lewis Hamilton out of the race early, and then George Russell on the final lap. And we can dive into the way that Alonso played it and what happened with George. But that is an absolute catastrophe for Mercedes to come away with 0 points, especially when you had some sitting there for you on lap 58 of 58.
Just when you think like George can kind of salvage a weekend, right? And and even it might have looked like he could have got some more points. I mean, I didn't think he was going to pass Fernando. Fernando takes the grid penalty, but still, I don't know. Dusty, obviously, Lewis Hamilton, you can kind of see why he's made this decision to move to Ferrari with what's going on at Mercedes. Like this has been years of, this guy was a bad decision away from becoming the all-time leader in drivers' championships to, fighting in the mid pack with a 2x4 with wheels. Like this thing, they just can't get the balance right when they can't perform over a whole weekend either. All right. Like it's like either they're good in qualifying and they have no race pace or vice versa. I don't know what the answers are for Mercedes at this point. Really, I was reading some things. It looks like they are just it seems like they're throwing in the towel until the new regulations come in at this point, Dusty. Like they've given up with this thing, and that you can it makes no sense for Lewis to stay if that's the case.
How do you think George Russell's feeling right now? Like he came in, he was the guy behind Lewis. Now Lewis is leaving, and you're like, I'm the man at Mercedes. And even when Lewis has been on the track this year, Russell has been the better of the two. But now, like you just kind of laid it out, I think a lot of people probably agree with you. It's got to be extremely frustrating for George Russell right now.
Well, it's better than Williams.
Yeah, that's
so
true. It is better than
you
where he
know,
was.
and
Yeah.
he's so for him to be battling for ninth, 10th, and 11th to I would say like what 3 through 5, 6 probably now he can there's still a glimpse of a podium depending on the first corner and what happens there for George. And really he's performed well in that thing. So but I don't think he knows any different to Dusty. If he starts if there was a little bit more success from George Russell in the last few years and just no progress with the car, I think you'd see the same thing. I mean, he'll be fine, but they won't be long. If Mercedes goes in to 2026 with the new regulations and they don't look competitive, how much longer does George want to stay without at least challenging for podiums and possibly getting into the mix for winning a championship? I'm sure he'll start looking somewhere else too.
Nielson and Gage with you here on the Pitstop Pals. If you have any friends who are F1 fans, tell them about the podcast. They can check it out. If you're watching over on YouTube right now and you want to chime in, feel free to do that as well. Gager, we talked about it. It hasn't been a bad start to the season for Checo at Red Bull, but there's all this discussion on who's going to be riding shotgun with Max. Is it going to be Alonso? Could it be Carlos Sainz? Who else could they possibly look at? And we said it, I think, on earlier episodes this season, and it's very fresh into the season. We haven't done a lot of episodes yet, but basically, if you're Checo, if you get an opportunity like the one with Verstappen kind of going out last race, you're that car now. You're that Red Bull car now. Try to do something with it. How much of a buzzkill do you think it was for him? And I know sometimes I think everybody puts too much focus on one race, but Max goes out and it's 2 Ferraris, it's 2 McLarens, and then it's still you, Checo. Like, how much do you think that hurts his future with Red Bull?
A lot. I mean, they obviously think they have the car and they want to be 1-2, right? Like that's what they want. They can't have, although Max seems unbeatable, he's got to perform better in qualifying. That's what it comes down to. He has to push his teammate a little bit, I think. And that's what from all accounts, I mean, that's what Christian Horner says a lot of the times when he's interviewed. Checo's got to find 10ths here and it's probably coming more upsetting for the team that he's not constantly or consistently in getting into third qualifying, challenging for poles, getting the Red Bull lockout on the first corner.
Yeah.
This is and having Max having to do all the legwork for this stuff. And if this stays the same and you have Checo battling with 2 McLarens and 2 Ferraris and looking at them from behind, it doesn't look good for him still in that Red Bull seat for next year.
It is funny because he is 3rd in the standings right now. He's a point back of Charles Leclerc. And after Max going out last race, he's only 5 points behind Max. So we'll see how that plays out. The updated standings after Australia: Verstappen at 51 points, Leclerc at 47, Checo's at 46, Carlos Sainz is at 40. Then you got the McLarens back-to-back, 28 and 27. Piastri with a slight advantage on Lando over there. George Russell with 18 points. Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, both ahead of Lewis Hamilton right now. And I think that kind of brings us back around to a couple of other things from the Australian Grand Prix, Gager. And let me know if you have anything else. But Lance Stroll finishing 6th and Yuki Tsunoda finishing 7th. Outstanding results for both those guys.
Well, I mean, it's funny, like, because he's the golden boy this weekend, right? So there's a lot of interviews with him, which is great. I think he's performed quite well in the Cash App car.
He's 11th right now in the standings. He's 2 points back of Lewis,
and he's outperformed his teammate essentially every single race. This is. Enough's enough with Daniel Ricciardo. And even Red Bull wants him to take over that second seat, but how can they do that? They can't. they can't have him jump ahead of Yuki and get the second Red Bull seat, can they? Like that doesn't.
No,
That makes
I don't think
no
you can do that.
sense.
No, there would. How do you justify that? How are you supposed to
No.
justify that? Like he has less of a future than Yuki Tsunoda. He's not performing as well as Yuki Tsunoda. He didn't even have a seat last year. I mean, there's just no way. There's no way you can do that. I mean, with that being said, I'd still like to see him in that car for a couple races, but you can't do it.
I really think this is. I give it 2 more races here, Dusty. If he doesn't get some points and challenge to get into Q3, I mean they've pulled the trigger quickly before. I mean, not just with last year with Nick DeVries. They've been known to vacate seats quite quickly if guys aren't performing. And there's a long list of Red Bull Academy guys waiting to get in, maybe challenging for that seat. I know it's sad because I think Daniel Ricciardo's great, but gosh, he just can't put it together, and he's in a much better situation than he's been in a long time. But just can't.
Like you can't be behind Haas in the standings.
No,
like you can't be behind those two guys. So nothing against Haas, but still you can't be there if you're Danny Rick right now.
Well, not if Yuki's there too. I can see if Yuki's behind him, right? Then it makes sense.
He didn't even get into second qualifying. He didn't get into Q2, right? Like that sucks.
Yeah, it's just it's unacceptable for what he said and the confidence that he said he came in, because now the way he's speaking, it sounds exactly the Daniel Ricciardo that we saw at McLaren,
at the tail end of McLaren,
at Renault. Yeah, it seems like his confidence is shattered. It's a shell of Daniel Ricciardo from when he just popped into the car last year.
Well, it'd be big if he could finish 8th, 9th, 10th or something this week. Anything else from down under there, Gager?
No, that's basically it. That's just the Ricciardo thing didn't work out. Piastri, the fans were looking. It was upsetting that he couldn't get on the podium, and and Lando got it. But I think I still stand by my words. I think Piastri will win a race before Lando Norris.
J Dog is in and says that car isn't that good. They always finish mid to bottom. He's talking about Danny Rick. Yeah, but when you see your teammate doing that much better, I think that's the only comparable they really have. Gage, like that's really what you have to look at. Like,
well, and they took a lot of the specs from last year's Red Bull car, too, right? Yeah. So really, both of them, I think, should be doing better. I think they will be challenging more so in the bottom mid pack soon. They should be anyways. But it can't be that much of a difference. Like Ricardo's got to perform Fernando isn't a better car, but he has to be, that veteran guy that somehow just battles out, points somehow. Like even if if they're 9th or 10th, he has to find a way to finish and be competitive throughout the whole weekend instead of these, we didn't get it right this weekend, or it just can't happen. And again, I'm pulling for him, but yeah, the time's running out.
All right, looking ahead to this weekend, as they head to Japan, obviously Yuki Tsunoda will certainly be in a spotlight there. What's storyline number 1 for you heading into this one, though, Gager? What do you think?
Well, I want to start at the back with Kick Sauber. That was they have. I mean, we've been talking about how bad with Danny Ricciardo. These guys can't get anything right, and I mean, from their pit stops to the guns to the performance of the car, and I don't know. This is really disappointing because I kind of like how that car looks. It's pretty sharp, but man. Like 30-second pit stops, Dusty, like for both guys. It's crazy. It seems like they're just waiting for Audi to take over. But I mean, Audi's probably sitting there going, oh my gosh, we got to get in here and try to
what are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah. Like what is going on here with these guys? So again, 2 guys that good drivers, but you want to obviously hindered by the equipment that they have right now, and they just must be like, well, what's going to happen next year? If are they just going to go in a whole new direction with Audi? Like these guys are wanting to perform and show what they can do for the new team coming in, but how do you do it with such a crappy car and just a completely discombobulated team?
It's concerning. The back end right now is not looking good. Obviously, Alpine has been an absolute disaster as well. Up at the top, going to Japan. I mean, would you expect Ferrari to push Max more so than McLaren pushes Ferrari this weekend, Gage? Or how do you play that out?
I think Ferrari, just because it's a high speed track. Well, it's a I think McLaren and Ferrari is going to have good weekends again. High speed track with those big S corners. I think it suits up well for them to. I mean, we'll see what happens, how close they can get to Max here, and the full race pace. But I think we saw what happened when Lewis was trying to catch Lando a few races back, and straightaway speed, the Mercedes had it, but once they got into the corners, Lando just pulled away, and it was a different car once it got onto the into the high speed stuff. So, man, I think that, well, we'll see, but I would like to see that they see what happens with Ferrari, because they have their car looks good in those high speed corners as well. So I think you can see a lot of battling there. Red Bull always seems to get the right balance in the car for those things, but I think we'll kind of see a repeat from a weekend past.
Max Verstappen won in 2022. He won in 2023. Prior to that, after missing 2 years due to the pandemic, it was a run on Mercedes for 6 years in Japan. Bottas won in 19. Hamilton was 17 and 18. Nico Rosberg was in 16. And then Lewis was before that in 2014 and 15. So the big boys have been able to get it done. The last non-Red Bull or Mercedes car to win in Japan, you have to go back to Renault with Alonso in 2008. In fact, Alonso's won here twice, 2006 and 2008, 18 years ago. Fernando Alonso won his first time at the Japanese Grand Prix. He's had 2 of them total. So, yeah, highly unlikely.
No, it's going to be great. I like this. Usually they don't have this race so early in the season. Years past, I guess it was later. If you watch the Rush movie, it was later in the season, usually rainy. So
actually there's some rain in the forecast this weekend, isn't there? Okay, I think I think somebody said there's some rain. I saw that super perfect. Early this morning when I got up, hopped on Twitter when I'm still half asleep, and I'm pretty sure I saw some rain in the possible forecast this weekend. So
that'll be great. That would,
basically, the tweet that I saw was they're thinking it could make it. I mean, depending on the rain and the level of it, but make it at least a 2-stop, possibly a 3-stop. So
that would be great.
Yeah.
Another thing, what happens with Williams, forgetting their gear to the game? That was what? How do you not bring everything that you need to an F1 race?
That causes somebody loses their job there, right?
I don't get that, Dusty. That was another thing that I wanted to touch on. And then not only that, but for to have Sargent being kicked out of his seat, and he's got to just be shattered at this point. Obviously, they showed confidence in giving him another year. He did improve, I thought, in the last few races of last year, but again, he's being outperformed by his teammate by a country mile. You can see why they gave him the seat and they replaced the driver in the first place, but this has got to be a huge blow. I'm interested to see how he responds here. If he can, not only keep the car on track here, but actually perform and possibly at least mimic his teammates' performance. That's what I want to see most. I don't want to. want to see him kind of compete a little bit more to Alex, because it's enough's enough.
Hey, before we wrap, I rewatched Ford versus Ferrari a couple nights ago. Just threw it on while I was doing some work. What a movie. Like, that was a really good movie, man.
It's fantastic.
Like, it was, I think this is the third time I watched it now. And every time I watch it, I'm like, yeah, this is extremely well done. I thought that was just an outstanding movie.
Even Fernando, that's what he says he wants to do, like event again, right? Compete in Le Mans one more time or something like that. Just the 24-hour race. Yeah, fantastic movie.
Christian Bale is unreal in that movie.
Oh, he's such a race car driver. Just nails it, right?
Yeah.
Just absolutely nails it.
Right down to his death. Like down to just what it was, right? So, spoiler alert. That's how it ends. Wait, not at Le Mans, but still. All right.
Who do you got this weekend, Dusty?
I mean, I'll probably take Max Verstappen. But I would, I will say this. I think we'll have 3 different teams on the podium this week. Let's go there. Okay. I think we're going to see Ferrari, we're going to see McLaren, and we're going to see Red Bull on the podium this week.
Okay.
I'll be very interested to see which Ferrari it is.
Yeah.
Like, if it signs again, then... We didn't talk about it. We talked about it on our show this morning, but I don't think you can, because you're bringing in Lewis Hamilton, and he alone is a big ticket, and you're going to sell so much stuff. But, I mean, if Carlos Sainz is second or third in the driver's standings after the midway point of the season, and you're bringing in Lewis, and Mercedes has been a joke, and you're like, how much has he got left in the tank? I don't know how you regret bringing in Lewis Hamilton. I'm sure they won't. But, man, would that be an interesting storyline in the second half of the year.
Dusty, if he finishes ahead of Leclerc, like in this race, like that's more gasoline on the fire, right? Like what did we just do? And I don't know. That again, I said like Mercedes likes him. There's been talk of Carlos at Red Bull. If I could see him, there's a possibility of going back to Red Bull, right? But then again, they talk. This is weird. I read about it again. They talk about him going to Kick Sauber or Audi, and building that.
Can't do it, man. Like that would have to be a huge ticket. Hey, like that would have to be a ridiculous contract to go there.
Yeah, there's multiple years there, and Carlos likes the multi-year deals, right? Doesn't like the one and done. So, but interesting.
Who do you got this week?
I'm going to go with Max. I'm going to have Piastri on the podium here. Piastri, and then Fernando Alonso. I think.
Oh wow! Okay,
veteran at this track. Time for him to. I mean, pretty good performance aside from saying the problem with the throttle and making George crash, but I could see him getting on his first podium with you.
All right, buddy. Well, enjoy the race. We'll break it down next week.
Awesome.
He's Joaquin Gage. I'm Dustin Nielson. That's the Pitstop Pals. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the podcast. By F1 fans, for F1 fans. Enjoy the race. We'll talk to you next week.
The 2 championship contenders giving it everything.
No, Mikey. No, Mikey.
It's lights out.
No, Mikey.
And away we go.